وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين ما بعد. So the Disciples Primer, we read the book before more than once. The book is available for purchase as well. You can visit our websites, our Amazon page, and inshallah ta'ala, everyone here for tonight should have a copy of the PDF. I believe I will clear with everyone. Inshallah, that was the intention, that was the goal. And we can airdrop, inshallah. If anybody would like me to airdrop the book, the airdrop is on. If you have it, inshallah, if you're using that. Khairan, inshallah. Okay, first and foremost, it's a 38-page book. 38 pages, that's less than 50 pages. Extremely lean. No fat, no gristle, no tendons. Extremely lean. Extremely lean. Speaking on Hadith sciences, could take 3,000 pages. And it still wouldn't get to the bottom of everything. So 38 is an intentional size. Small, simple, easily digested. No matter how smart, how busy you are or aren't, you'll be able to benefit from the book. And a big part of studying, as we have explained, in the way of the disciple, is the mentality, is the mindset. And if something is too big, if a book is too thick, and you're not a super duper hardcore reader, it's going to be intimidating. And if it's intimidating, then half of the battle, if not the entire battle, is already lost. Is this not the case? If your opponent has intimidated you, the fight is basically what? Pretty much. Right? We mentioned examples or names when boxers ceased being intimidated by him. What happened? No doubt, he's skilled, no doubt, talented, extremely. But a big part of his art of war was what? Period. You can't think straight, you can't box straight when you're scared to death. So once the intimidation factor was put to the side, now it's boxer versus boxer. So the same applies to studying a book or science. 500 pages. 100 pages. And then you end up not studying, or you go into the study of the book half-hearted. If you're intimidated by the size, you pretty much lost the battle already, lost the fight. Everyone clear this or not? So, once again, we know that the Prophet ﷺ, whenever he spoke, he would say it 3 times, the way that people would understand the power and the importance of repetition. So therefore, as a beginner, no matter what you're trying to study, what book, what teach, what course, what method, what etc., if it's the first time you're being introduced to that, much simplest and shortest. The initial step. After that, then you can move on to something bigger. This is more popular. This is more, so on, but simplest and the shortest. All right. So it's a 30-page book. The book was copywritten in 2007. So it's going on what? About 8 years now? Close to a decade. And it's dedicated to all we found disciples. Table of contents. Author's introduction is on page 1. Question 1. The book is formulated in the style of Q&A for further ease. Even easier. It's short, it's simple, and it isn't a version of another work. Benefits that you get from reading a translated book or translated work. No doubt about that. But the book wasn't written for you. The style of the book was written for someone in a different language. If I write a book in Ukrainian, or Russian, and it's translated into English. The English speaker can benefit from it if it's a good translation. If it's a bad translation, you still benefit from it. But your mindset coming from the United States isn't like the mindset of someone who lives or raised in Ukraine. Just the mindset alone is different. So there's certain words, expressions that you're just not going to get. It's that I'm saying to my audience that I'm automatically expecting to be familiar with, let alone everybody in Ukraine heard of this story. Everyone has heard of this fable. So I don't have no need of slowing down or introducing it. I just put it in a book. So translated, there's certain things that you can't get. Now it's even worse if the book is coming from an original language and it's speaking to someone of a different higher level. This book was written for a student of knowledge, not a Muslim. This book was written for someone who was a scholar. It was a response, it was a debate, it was a critical, it wasn't written for me on the train going to work. I don't understand this. 3 strikes are out. The book is coming from another language, written for a different audience or crowd, meaning the level. And thirdly, it was written in time. And once again, the older the book, the better. The more classic, the more classical. That's not the point. But the point is the style of writing 5 years ago is going to be a little different than today. What the Muslims were going through, suffering, experiencing 5, 6, 1,000 years ago isn't like what? Today. Everyone understand this? So, the original language, not translation. The level is for the simplest forms. I'm not the sharpest knife in the shed or the sharpest tool. I acknowledge that. I go to work. I work 17 hours a day, 15 hours a day. I'm overseas studying. I don't have the exotic stuff. I'm a basic simple Muslim. And thirdly, written in the 21st century. And fourthly, if you want something more than the 3, which would be more than enough, it is written from someone whose mother tongue is English and whose mother culture is that of the West. Because there are people who know English, who speak English, but they weren't born and raised here. There are people who speak perfect, fine English, but so all of these are reasons, and we spoke about in the introduction, why and how we wrote this book. And fifthly, icing on the cake, is that it's made in simple question and answer form. So the first question is, what does the word hadith literally mean? Is the science of hadith important, and if so, why? Question 2, what does the word hadith literally mean? Question 3, what does hadith mean in Islam? Question 4, can you please give some examples? Question 5, what does the word sahih mean? Question 6, what about the term hasan? I read in a book that says hasan. Tirmidhi says hadith is hasan. I read in a footnote of a book, it says Albani declared it, graded it as hasan. What's meant by that? Hasan hadith. Some scholars say the hadith is fabricated, some say it's weak, but I read that Suyuti or Nawawi says hasan. What is hasan hadith? Why and how? Question number 8. How many conditions and standards are there for sahih? What's meant by hadith being sahih? Question 9. Please mention those conditions, but in brief. Not too long, not too scholastic. Just give me the simple, basic ABCs. Question number 10. Please give a brief and simple explanation of these conditions. Knowing the number is 1 level. Knowing the names is a 2nd level. Having an explanation of them is a 3rd and more complete level. How many states are there in the United States? 52 or 50?
50 Sahih.
50 Sahih, huh? Allahu Alam. Alright, so let's say we can agree, 50. So me knowing that there are 50 states in the United States, that's a type of what? That's a level of what?
Knowledge.
There's knowledge, for sure. Versus one, I don't know. versus someone who says they're 40, versus someone who says they're 60. Me knowing the number is a type of or level of what? Everybody doing this or not? Now, what are those 50 states? Arkansas, Alabama, Pennsylvania, knowing their names, that's another level of knowledge. Correct or incorrect? Florida, California, Texas, Maine, so on and so forth. Now, me, even in brief, knowing that Texas is in mid, south, southwest, California is totally west coast. New York is totally east coast. Side and North Carolina share borders. Colorado, right? Washington State, so on and so forth. Me having a general idea of where the states are located. What states are most populated? What states are largest? What states are smallest? What states were the original 13 colonies? What states were acquisition after the Louisiana Purchase? After the Mexican-American War, so on and so forth. That's not what? Everyone understand? So the first step is knowing the what? The number. How many conditions for Sahih Hadith? 2, 6. Wrong answer. What are those conditions in brief? Everybody understand this? What are the names of those conditions? Everybody understand? Right, move forward. Question number 11 states, what is the difference between a hadith that is sahih and one that is hasan? Question 12, what does the term da'if mean? What's a weak hadith? Hadith bad meaning? Hadith, when you hear it or read it, for sure the Prophet didn't say it. What's the da'if hadith? What is it? Question 13, what does it technically mean? Question 14, what are the parts of a hadith? Parts of the anatomy, what makes up water? H2O. What's hydrogen? What's oxygen? So on and so forth. But just knowing that there are parts, right? There are parts to it. What does the word isnad mean? What's an isnad? Where you get that from? Give me the isnad on that. This hadith has been reported with an authentic isnad. What is an isnad? Question number 16, please give an example of an isnad. I need to see it. I learn by looking through things. I need to hear it, see it, feel it, touch it, to grasp it. Give me a real life example of an isnad. Question number 17, please give an example of a metin. Metin. What's a metin? Question number 18, what is the most genuine book of hadith? Question number 19, who was Imam al-Bukhari? Who was he? Where did he live? Where did he come from? Question 20. What is the next soundest book after that of Imam al-Bukhari? Question number 21. The 6 mother books of hadith. The 6 main books of hadith, in which I should have in my house, and which time to time me and my wife we pick up a volume and read it together. And which from time to time show my son and my daughter something. In which me and you are different in the masjid. I come in the masjid and I make 2 rak'ah. Nothing is in front of me, nothing. I just pray in the middle of the musalla. And then you come and you say, Ahi, you should have something in front of you when you pray. You should not pray in an open area in the musalla. There should be something in front of you. And I say, no, I've never heard of that. No, I don't follow the scholars that you listen to. Or that's not my madhab, or whatever. What's the easiest, quickest way for us to settle this dispute? La? No, that's not the answer. What's the simplest, quickest way?
That's the 2 evils.
No, it's a simple answer. 6 mother books of hadith. This is Bukhari, Abu Dawud. Here's the dalil. The Prophet ﷺ, when he prayed, he put this in front of him. The Prophet didn't allow anyone to walk in front of him, so on and so forth. So if you don't know the fundamental sources, you're going to quote this one and that one and this one, fatwa. I don't accept that. But who's going to say that I'm not going to accept the hadith that's clearly in all of the books? Muslim, Abu Dawud, Tirmidhi. So you being fundamentally sound with the sources. Even if you don't have the hadith memorized by heart. But I know what these mother books of hadith are. And for argument's sake, I can take a guess. Or for argument's sake, just argument's sake, I can bluff you. Show me the dalil, what we say. What's the dalil on that? Right? Not delete. Show me the dalil. What's the proof of that? What's the chances, right? Is this not the case? Can we not say that? Say dalil. The chances of something so basic and fundamental about the prayer not being mentioned in the... No, not the sunnah. No, not the hadith. That's the 6. Hold on. You guys are not? No, they're not with me. Of course, we're already discussing hadiths. We're talking about sunnah. We're talking about the books. A dispute if you have with a co-worker, anybody, a non-Muslim. If you know the 6 mother books of hadith, you know that 9 out of 10 times this issue is found in those books. You guys with me or not? You have no knowledge of the 6 books, what they are, why they the mother books they want to be. Google this searching. I want to find the dalil for trimming the mustache and leaving the beard. Let's see, where can I find this at? Let me see Muslim. The chapter of such. So to be familiar with those books is going to lead to a stronger Islam. Everybody clear this one up? Stronger Islam. And there are hundreds, if not thousands, of other books of hadith, fundamentals. And then you learn how to respect and appreciate other books, such as Nawawi's 40. Because he had it from somewhere. And then you learn how to respect and appreciate Muwatta Malik. When you realize that he was born, he was a great scholar before Bukhari came along. And he wrote a book before their books. And Riyadh al-Salihin. And Mishkat Masabih. And the list goes what? On and on. The history of it. You know how it evolved. And this was a summarized picture off the old block. If you think that this guy is amazing, you need to meet his father. Is this not the case? You've heard about him and his adventures, and then you need to hear about his dad or his brother. He was even crazier. He's even wealthier. So the branch, you have to go back to the root. Every single Muslim should have basic understanding, not scholastic, but at least a basic understanding. What are the 6 books of hadith and who are their authors? Because that's where your religion comes from. The deen, the day-to-day practice. All right. Question number 22. Which one of these books is the soundest in general after Sahih Muslim? Bukhari and Muslim in a class by themselves. After Bukhari and Muslim, which of the 4 books of Sunan are most authentic? Abu Ijaz, you say it to me, Abu Ijaz, what you got? I don't know what you're going to say. I know what you're going to say. Fadl, go ahead. I knew he was going to say it soon enough. Anybody else? The most authentic, the cleanest of the 4 books of Sunan is An-Nasa'i. Nasa'i is the most authentic out of the 4. Abu Dawud is more popular, is more used by the fuqaha. Tirmidhi is most beneficial pound for pound. Ibn Majah's features, but Nasa'i is a sunnah. The least of men, narrators that were spoken aside, so on and so forth. That's a thing that, from me, what? To you. Take it, what? For free, okay? Inshallah. All right. Question number 23. Which book is best for studying fiqh? Which of the 4 is best book for studying fiqh? For studying the madhab, comparative fiqh, etc. 4. Question number 24. Which of these 6 books has the most thorough overall benefit and why? As you say, pound, pound. He has a heavier punch, but pound for pound, he's a better boxer. When you talk pound for pound, meaning every box is what? Checked. This, that, pound for pound, he's better. Even on this one feature, he's better. He's superior, he's inferior. But pound for pound, this is the best of the books. Moving forward. What are some other famous and important books of Hadith? Much more than just 6 of them. What are those other books? And why are they important and why are they famous? Question number 26. Please tell us something about the history of the science of Hadith. Where did it come from? Did it start party? Did it start with Ahmed? Did it start with this one and one, Ibn Hajar? Did the Muslims just make it up and come up with it? Or does it have a history, a pedigree, and an evolution? Moving forward, and obviously that's a long discussion concerning one's Islam and giving dawah to non-Muslims and Muslims. And the stronger you are in understanding this, the easier it is for you to give effective dawah. That's a fact. All right, appendix number 1. So the book is a collection of 26 questions. Okay, 26 questions. 38 pages, then take you literally, you can read that in 20 minutes. 30 minutes, hour at max. Sitting in traffic, in the airport, waiting for your flight, waiting for your train, you can finish it just like that. And then inshallah ta'ala you read it a second time. And if you really want to have a good understanding, read it 3 times. One book that you read 3 times is better than 3 books. Don't ever forget that. Reading one book 3 times or 5 times is better than 5 books. Move forward. Appendix 1. Who is a hadith disciple? What's a disciple? Is it some Christian stuff? Is there some kung fu stuff? The Grandmaster says he's my disciple, the Shaolin disciple. Is it some street stuff, some J poetry stuff, a streets disciple? Why the word, who is a hadith disciple? Where did that come from? What does it mean? Next appendix 2 says, simple tea. Free tea recipe. Nothing goes better than reading and drinking tea. Now, they say the different cup, all right? Tell you? All right. Okay. So, brief faida. It stays here. Listen to this. It says, from the most important sciences is the science of verifying the prophetic, knowing their context, distinguishing those which are authentic and fair from those which are weak and poor, along with the rest of its well-known sections and divisions. Imam Nawawi died 676 after the Hijrah. Author of 40 Hadith, Riyadh Salihin, this heroic champion Nawawi, he says from the most important things to study is the science which sifts through that which is genuine versus that which is fraudulent. And anything which is a need or a necessity or a requirement of that. And that is of Hadith. That is the machine. You put the bills in. Alright? With the sound effects or not?
That was good.
Tayyib? Everybody clear on this or not? Counting and also making sure what? How? It's of utmost importance for a banker, correct? A cashier and count what? There's no question about that. How can that be? And the same applies to your religion. And if you don't have that, this ability, you'll be handed something, you'll miscount something, you'll be shorted on something concerning your iman, your akhlaq, your behavior. Muslims should sit like this, and they shouldn't sit like that. You practice that your entire life, even though it hurts your back or your legs, or where you come from, your culture, we sit differently. No, Muslims need to sit like this. And then you discover later on that the Prophet ﷺ never not went like that. Not once. Let alone told the people that they should, let alone have to sit like that. You were taught something, you stuck to something that was counterfeit. That you didn't have to do. But because you didn't have the system, you know how to check and verify, you fell victim to it. And then it's a posture of sitting, which is a cultural sitting, but I told you it's the Sunnah way of sitting. Imagine about what you believe in, and how you believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And how you offer salah, how you pray. Imagine the foods and the drinks that you thought were haram and you were told are makruh, you can't eat them, you can't drink them. And the Prophet's favorite drink was this. And his favorite meal was that. And the list goes on and on and on. So it's extremely important and it's so practically beneficial. That is why we put that excerpt there. And of course, many Muslims, they claim to love, know we, respect him, to follow his teachings. And that's what he had to say about it. Then it's on the next page is a testimonial. Testimonial states, I started my journey of seeking knowledge 4 years ago. But it wasn't until I was introduced to the science of Hadith that I felt like all the pieces of the puzzle were coming together for me. This booklet is a great summary of information. It took me a while to gather and grasp. It is also a great review for those similar with the field. And that by initials M. bint Ahmed. So that's a sister, one of our sisters in Islam. She wanted to put, she asked for that testimony to be put in the book. The book was published in 2017. She said 4 years ago. Wallahu ta'ala. All right, Tayyip, who's our volunteer reader on page 1? Fadl.
Where do I read from?
You don't have the book. SubhanAllah. SubhanAllah. Yeah.
So I understood.
That's why I asked you guys the
Question number 1.
that introduction.
Introduction.
Get a copy. You have an email, you have a tablet, you have a device, you have a printer with you. No paper, no ink.
Thank you.
Photo.
Author's introduction. In the name of Allah, which is the beneficent. May Allah be praised. I send prayers and salutations upon Muhammad, his companions, and followers to proceed. The purpose of this booklet is to enlighten the everyday Muslim or Muslimah on the basics of the great and noble science of
The purpose of this book is not made for a fully grown student of knowledge. It isn't for you. The book isn't written for a scholar. The book isn't written for a non-Muslim. Even though a non-Muslim can benefit from it. But the book isn't geared for, as the audience is, the target audience is specific. And it's extremely important, especially when being introduced to a science. Like anything else, you buy the shoes that fit your feet. Wearing shoes that are too small, too big, will have a what? A harm upon you. Correct or incorrect? Whether short term or long term, whether it's a little big, but that's not your shoe size. Being in the ring, sparring with someone out of your weight class, right? Is going to have a what? That's it. That's why they have what? Weight classes. When it comes to this, we feel that there aren't any weight classes. That anyone can just discuss anything, talk about anything, teach anything, learn anything. And this is one of the reasons why we have so much fusion in the Dawah scene. And it's another reason why we have so much bickering and arguing and fighting. Because there are so many topics we aren't to be discussing and talking about, and let alone with the aggression, the fanaticism, the bigotry. So perhaps this is a step forward, rectifying things. There are levels, there are ranks, there are degrees. So the book is written for the average Muslim.
It is meant to introduce you to simple. It is meant to introduce you to the simple concept of Hadith and its components, some of his main books and greatest authors. I believe that these small but large of information should be known by every single Muslim man, woman, child, no matter what their background and level of Islamic awareness may be. This book is a total of 26 questions and answers I wrote the other day between Asr and Maghrib at the Prophet's sacred mosque.
So I wrote this book when I was in school in Medina. I'm sitting in the masjid, and alhamdulillah, Allah gave me the ability to put the book together. Obviously, the editing of the book was later on. It took more time, but the prototype or the rough draft was done between Asr and Maghrib, the Prophet's sacred mosque. Further.
It's a simplified beginner's guide.
Simplified beginners. Double. For beginners, and it's also simplified.
Beginner's guide to Hadith is meant to lead, not explain.
Are you understand this? Lead and not what? Training wheels.
The intended wish is that this humble work will spark the reader's interest.
Spark the reader's interest, whetting your appetite. It's just a little sample. If you want more, this is where you find it.
And drive him or her larger.
For both sexes. It's not just for men. It's not just for women. Anyone who wants the knowledge.
And her to larger and more explanatory works. We ask Allah the Sublime, the Most High, to make it a means of reviving study of the Sunnah. Reviving the study of the Sunnah, which for many years, rather generations before this one, many scholars have said, Tuwiya bisatuhu. His carpet has been rolled up. Hundreds of years ago they said that. Long gone. And they said that in Baghdad. They said that in Syria. Imagine 400, 500, 700 years later in America. So this is an attempt to be in the night ta'ala, and hopefully, this poor slave of Allah, a worthy contribution to that movement, what we call the Hadith Renaissance. Fadl. To make it a means of reviving the study of the Sunnah, a means of pleasure for the true Hadith lovers. A pleasure for the true Hadith lovers. People who love it, people who enjoy it, people who want more, who need more, people who find an interest and a joy in reading and studying about Hadith and its science. And a thorn in the side of every jealous and envious hater. I mean. It's that simple. Tayyib. Question number 1. You didn't read the entire introduction. Oh, Mufti Muhammad ibn Munir al-Mudina Munawwara from the Prophet's Sacred Mosque, April 18, 2014. 2014, the book was written. Further. The Disciples Primer. Question number 1. Question number 1, next reader. Bismillah.
Science of Hadith important, and if so, why?
Is the science of Hadith important? And if it is, why? It may seem like a loaded question or a setup question, but it's a valid question. Because there are many people, and unfortunately, people who are learned, and many others who claim to be learned, who may say, no, it's not important. It's in America. Rather, not only is it not mandatory, necessary, not only is it not important, but you shouldn't even speak about it. You shouldn't even talk about it. You shouldn't even address it. You'd be shocked if I told you some of the people that said these exact words to me in the Prophet city. In the Prophet city. Very scary. Fadl.
Answer 1. Yes, it is very important.
It is very important.
An answer to this question can be found in the correct meaning of Islam, which is the embracing.
Something that everybody wants. And something that everybody claims. Islam, Muslim. I want to be a Muslim. I want to practice Islam. Okay. First technique, Yahi, is when you're discussing discussing something with someone who agrees or disagrees with you, you always start on neutral ground. That's a rule. Start on neutral ground. The coin toss is at midfield. Not in my end zone, your end zone, 20, midfield. Even. Neutral ground. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, how often in the Quran does He teach us about the importance of marriage? Those who claim to love Christ. Those who claim to love His mother. Those who claim to love God. Those who say that we are the sons of God, the offspring of God. We're beloved by God. Those who feel that it's a bad thing to have daughters. It's a means of shame to have a baby girl. And then they turn around and they said, what about Allah? Allah has baby girls. How is that fair? On your premise. Everyone understand this or not? Those who have slaves and clearly acknowledge the virtue of being a master and being in the possession of slaves and the slaves at your service and that the slaves being a type of your wealth. Do your slaves share your wealth with you? Are they also master? Do they own? No, they don't. But yet and still, with my worship, you wish the people that are my slaves to be partners with me. How is that what? How's that fair? Everyone understand this or not? You guys with me? That's not what? It's not fair. On whose premise? Your premise. It's neutral. We can all agree that the master and the slave don't share the same what? Status. Right or wrong? Possible. You won't accept that in your lives, but then you turn around and say, Allah, who we acknowledge created all the slaves, He has partners from His slaves. So the list goes on and on and on. Which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala teaches us the importance of speaking to someone who differs or disagrees with us, starting where? A premise that they both agree upon. And then from there, let's walk and discuss it. So you claim to love Christ. I also claim to love Christ. Okay, no problem. Why do we love Him? What was He? Speaking to a Muslim who says that we shouldn't be learning Hadith, we shouldn't be studying them, we shouldn't be talking about them. Okay, no problem. But you Islam, you love Islam, I claim Islam, I claim to love Islam. And from there, you don't start off with a discussion on a topic that he doesn't agree with. Everyone understand this? You don't start off with something which is controversial. You don't start off with something which is, there's different views concerning it. Let's go back to that which we can both agree on. Hence, neutral ground. So therefore, what is the meaning of Islam? Let alone the correct meaning of Islam, and why? Fadal, which is
the embracing,
submitting,
and following of the book.
And following the book of
Allah.
That's if you don't have that message from the Quran, then you haven't read the Quran. Embracing the Quran, following it, submitting to it, adhering to it, verse after verse, surah after surah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala keeps repeating that same message. The book we have given them. We gave them the scriptures. We gave it to them. We have sent down a book from us. A book full of knowledge. Wal Quran, alright, verse after verse. Wal Quran the Quran full of remembrance. So one of the greatest, if not the greatest message of the Quran that we all claim to believe in and love is to what? Submit, follow, etc. Number 2. And if that's not Islam, then what? What is Islam? What is Islam then? What can Islam be if it's not having the value for the Quran and trying not to follow it and to stick to it and to settle all disputes based off of the Quranic teachings? After that, Fadal.
And the Sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam.
The Sunnah of the Prophet. What does the Quran say about this man named Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam? Loving him, following him, respecting him. What does Allah say? Chastising the people who left without seeking his permission, who said things about his wife. Is this not the case? Verse after verse, the Quran talks about the steps of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Follow him, obey him, listen to him, submit to his ruling. فَلَا وَرَبِّكَ, Allah says, they cannot believe until they make who the judge? You. You can't be a believer until you make Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam the judge. All disputes. And that you have no hesitation, no stiffness or scratchiness in your heart. And they make full submission. If that isn't what we're understanding, we aren't understanding the Quran. So, in brief, simple terms, true Islam, pure Islam is submitting to the teachings of the Quran and the teachings of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Of that, there should be no dispute. Tayyip.
How do we know what to embrace with our hearts and thus submit to it, except with the proper knowledge of what Allah and His Messenger did or did not say, deed?
Common sense. It's just that simple.
I'm sorry.
How do you know about the 50 states? Unless you need to know about them. What's the largest state? What's the smallest state? You just guess and think about it. It doesn't come from the sky, just hit you upside like a rock or a stone or a pebble. You have to pick up a book or an atlas or whatever, and this state, that state. And where does that information come from? It doesn't come from thin air. It has to come from a tangible, palpable location.
This can only be obtained through authentic knowledge. As far as the glorious Quran, then its absolute authenticity is well known to each and every Muslim.
There's no discussion concerning the Quran being genuine and authentic. Every Muslim knows that and believes that. Secondly, furthermore,
the discussion of that topic is not meant for this small booklet. Moreover, the science of Hadith is from the noblest sciences of the Sharia. It is the greatest field of study after that of the glorious Quran. Other sciences are in need of it and rest upon it.
All other sciences, fiqh, seerah, tawheed, akhlaq, suluk, siyasa, politics, they're in need of hadith, the sciences, and it's not vice versa. Fadal?
Anyone who has no basic background in it will err and cause others to fall into error, whether he realizes it or not.
Whatever you're discussing as a Muslim, if the vertebrae and the backbone isn't there, it's major problems. You're going to say something's halal, haram, something's right, something's wrong, sunnah, bid'ah, so on and so forth.
This is regardless of whether or not he specializes in Aqidah, Tafsir, Fiqh, Islamic history, and so on. Let's take an example of this with the field of Tafsir of the Quran al-Karim. It is well established that the most correct way to interpret the Holy Quran is with the Holy Quran itself. The second most correct way is to interpret it with the prophetic Sunnah. How can this be done without a distinction between that which is authentic from that which is inauthentic? Furthermore, the third step is to interpret the Quran with the statements, the companions, and their disciples, the pious preachers. Their statements have only been passed down and recorded via isnads. Hence, this demands the one who reads them to have at least a basic ground in the Hadith and its sciences. Almost all of the sciences were written and passed down from generation to generation via the isnad, including the books of Islamic sciences of the Arabic language and its poetry, genealogy, and so on. As for Islamic jurisprudence, al-fiqh al-Islami, including the majority of the rulings of Islam, the halal and haram, prayer, zakat, fasting, hajj, marriage and divorce, buying and selling, regulations of jihad, etc., they are only mentioned in explicit detail in the prophetic Sunnah, the disciples' primer. Furthermore, all of the four Imams, Hadith, and their narrations, some of them being more skilled and masterful therein than others.
Abu Hanifa, Malik, Shafi'i. There's no way they can have their legacy and status without the Hadith. So you claim to be Shafi'i, you're supposed to be a Hadith disciple. Maliki, Khalas. One of the greatest, if not the greatest Hadith scholar of his era. That's a unanimous fact. And as far as Imam Ahmed, then there's no need to even mention that. Although,
Such as Imam Malik died in 179 after the Hijrah, and Imam Ahmed died 241 after the Hijrah. Another way of proving the importance of the science of Hadith is by looking into the other Islamic disciplines such as legal theory, usul al-fiqh, the life history of Muhammad, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, etc., and Nabawiyah, and so on. If what they base rules and conclusions upon is weak, then the results will likewise be weak. This is a very brief discussion of an extremely important matter in our religion, and if we attempt to discuss it in the detailed manner it deserves, this booklet of ours will turn to a large volume.
right. So, inshallah ta'ala, we have the theory, the principles, the columns, and of course, that which sits and rests upon the columns, the actual specifics. So 26 questions, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala. Here tonight, I have shared with the brothers a free copy, PDF. If you actual book itself, you can purchase it bi'idhnillahi ta'ala online from our website, HadithDisciple shop. You can Google it, you can put it on Amazon. Inshallah ta'ala, you can have it delivered to you. We don't have any physicals of that here with us tonight. This is a breakdown of the book, explanation of the history of the book, the theory of the book, the purpose of the book, qualities of the book. The rest, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala, will be you if and when you wish to benefit yourself concerning that. Alright? If and when you guys have the book, you read the book, find a mistake or a typo, or if you find something that you think is a mistake or whatever, please bring it forward. If you benefit from the book, simple thank you will do. If you have more questions or you want another source or how can I put it into practice, feel free. You're more than welcome of bringing forth any of that. Jazakumullah khairan. We will stop here tonight. Once again, Disciples Primer. Check it out, pick it up. Inshallah ta'ala, take the challenge yourself. And hopefully you'll find truth in what we say with regards to its use. Inshallah, its benefit. Jazakumullah khairan. The questions that weren't answered in the last session, the brothers and the sisters can ask them now if they like. And if not, we'll see what we have, inshallah ta'ala, from online. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala surely knows best. Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah.
They say that the books of the Hadith are very simple, and then there's even more than that. But they say that those books are not really for the Hawam, the common people. What do you say about that?
Meaning the other books or the six?
The six and the other books.
Right.
Mainly the six, not the secondary.
Understood. Jazakallah khairan. So with regards to the six other books of Hadith, let alone the other books before and after them or during their time, are not for the 9 to 5 layman Muslim. What do you say about that? I would say that it's a yes and a no answer, like anything else. Should the 9 to 5 average Muslim be dipping and delving into this, into that in full, extensive, head-first detail? Of course not. Especially without basic fundamental principles. Without a walking, talking, living source of knowledge to explain. Because we know knowledge is taken from the mouths of learned people. Books are beneficial, no question about that. The Quran teaches us that. And the Quran, Allah Azza wa Jalla tells us about the Jews. And that they wrote things with their hands. So the book is of utmost importance. The pen is of utmost importance. The very first revelation given to the Prophet is about reading. Read in the name of your Lord who created. Read in the name of your Lord who taught by what? By the pen. So there is no doubt or discussion about the importance, the paramount status of books and of writing and of documentation. So everything is taken in balance. Studying and learning with someone, a teacher, and also you reading and studying with that teacher and by yourself. There's no question with regards to that. So any science, no person is to be totally independent from without a teacher. That's a fact. Including Bukhari, Muslim, Abu Dawud, Tirmidhi, Nasai. There's all that. But one problem with that statement is, there's several problems, but one problem with that statement is many people, they have such a strict, rigid position against the 9 to 5 Muslim talking about hadiths and reading the hadiths. But politics, do they take that position and stance? No, they don't. They would every time they can Harry and the masjid to be talking about it and to be actors. It's just not the case. And whatever orientation a person is, if a Muslim is into politics, if a Muslim orientation is about asceticism and the softness of the heart, if a Muslim is in fighting and jihad and kufr and takfir, do they hold back their 5 people from talking about and discussing? They don't. But for some strange, weird reason, when it comes to hadith, totally off limits. But it's not off limits for you to have this discussion and this debate and this detail. Why the double standard? 9 to 5 Muslims shouldn't be reading this 10-book volume of fiqh, nor the 10-volume book of hadith. Agree or disagree? No, they can and they should read and discuss this, but not hadith. Hadith is so poisonous. It's so harmful. They're so detrimental. And unfortunately, you find people saying things like, this book will mislead you, but the book of this 9th or 8th or 10th century philosopher won't. The blatant, flagrant hypocrisy of people. And they claim to love the Prophet ﷺ, but day and night, don't read what he said, don't read how he prayed, don't. Don't you find that hypocritical? In any science that you read, Aqidah, Fiqh, Tafsir, Sirah, there are going to be things that are above and beyond your pay grade. And then there's going to be territory that's only for an expert. That's in any field. Automobiles. I should know the basics of exhaust, engine, this, that, blah, blah, blah. But do I know all of the details of the engine? How many batteries are in the car? But I need to know the basics. This is an alternator. The basics of a jump. The basics of a flat tire. The basics of you need oil, you need this. Basics. But I'm not a mechanic, let alone a master 30, 40-year mechanic. So that is in every aspect of life. Why the staunchness and the rigidness, the rigidity just for hadith. Hadith is the poisonous source. So that's a problem. So standardize the levels of learning. Layman Muslims shouldn't be reading this or that in any field. Hadith, fiqh, tafsir, everything. But don't just say do whatever you want, read whatever, but don't touch Bukhari because Bukhari will poison you. Secondly, the problem with that is that leads to don't read the hadiths because they're not for the layman people. Why not? There are things that you won't understand, there are things that will confuse you, and the Quran. Do you understand everything about the Quran? Tell me when this verse was sent down. How many interpretations about this one ayah? What did Ibn Abbas say? You don't know. But you tell the people to read the Quran, right? The Quran, does the Quran violence? Yes or no? Does it or does it not? Quran talk about slavery? Does the Quran not say beat women? Does the Quran not say cut the hand off the thief? So if you take that rationale, that logic, it would mean don't read the what as well. And that's why some masjids, they have that practice. Don't read anything, you just come to us. And obviously that is extremely convenient. And that is the doorway for me to monopolize everything. And that is what happened to Christianity and Catholicism. The only way to God is through the clergy. What happens when the clergy has all power? What happens when a clergy member is just a little, and then whack-a-da. So that's extremely dangerous. So all fields have their levels, not just hadith. It's going to be a benefit for a Muslim to read something and ask about it instead of you not reading it, let alone what is confusing about the Prophet used the toothstick before he prayed. What's confusing about that? What's confusing? The Prophet cried and he wept in his prayer. What's confusing? The Prophet visited this sick person. The Messenger of Allah said, treat orphans kindly. The Messenger of Allah said, treat women kindly. The Messenger of Allah said, you can't believe until you love your brother. What's so perplexing about that? Let's go scholastically demanding about me reading these. So it's a lot that can be said regarding that. Your level study in all fields, and be very, very careful. If the Prophet ﷺ was alive and living in front of you, would you say in front of him, I told the people not to read? I told the people that your words and actions will be confusing and harmful to them. Would you say that? So, Yani, that's what I would say concerning that. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala surely knows best.
So what if there?
We move on to the next question, Sheikh. We're going to come back. We'll come back to Allah. Just make sure the cup is what?
No, it's empty, but I'm
Inshallah, Sheikh.
I just want to get some clarification.
Hopefully that was clear.
Yeah,
Clear. We're going to come back, inshallah.
in general.
We're going to come back. We're going to come back. Abu Jahal.
Dalil and
Clear.
grabbing proofs from hadiths.
Clear.
There's many hadiths. So, you know.
We're going to come back,
inshallah.
inshallah. Any other questions? Fadl.
In the last time we spoke about the Antamalana, is that the interpretation of that? If people use, some people use that as in their name, right? So, Hadith or Tafsir, they're getting this interpretation of that.
That you can't have the name?
Right, but Malana is attributed as a protector, I believe. That my understanding is attributed to Allah only and not individuals. So is that coming from Hadith or Tafsir?
As many verses in the Quran in which that word or term is used. Mawlahu, Mawla al-Mu'mineen, Anta Mawlana. Allah Azza wa Jalla being the greatest Mawla. Subhanahu wa ta'ala. Ni'mal Mawla. A king. Allah Azza wa Jalla, he talks about Musa and Khadir, and he says that there was a king that was doing what? That was stealing the people's ships. Right or wrong? The king was doing what? Taking every ship. He was stealing every ship. And Allah Azza wa Jalla in the Quran, he gives himself the name and the title of what? Of king. We're talking about king. We're talking about king. Allah's king, the king who was stealing the ships? Wow. Understand? Aziz. Imra'atul Aziz, the wife of Aziz. How many times does Allah call himself? Azizun Hakim. So therefore, if you said to a sheikh, you said Maulana, nothing wrong with that. Aywa, there's nothing wrong with that. Bidnillahi ta'ala. That was attributed to Allah is one thing. And that was attributed to a weak, poor human being is a what? Another. Wallahu ta'ala. Wa yakum. Tayyip. Questions from online. It's coming from the UK. Initials are UK, England, Newcastle. Upon Tang. Salam Mufti. What are Islamic views on self-acceptance and self-compassion? Well, first and foremost, Islam doesn't have a view. Islam has ruling. Islam has rulings, teachings. A view is, my view, my opinion. Now, I know what you mean. I don't know what you're trying to say. And there may even be some room to, word it like that. Maybe, I said. But just for clarification, the ruling of Islam, you can ask an individual person, what's your view on this interpretation and understanding, etc. All right? At the end of the day, self-acceptance and self-compassion, those are vague terms. They could be true or they could be false, depending on how they're being used. One could say self-compassion and mean some other stuff. And one may say self-compassion, self-acceptance and self-compassion, something positive. So it depends on what you mean. Accepting what Allah gave you, being grateful and appreciative. Allah made you a man, Allah made you a woman, so on and so forth. You're content with wealth. You're content with not having a lot of wealth. Play it. Self-acceptance and you disobeying Allah, not trying, not striving. Different story. Wallahu ta'ala alam. Next question says, Assalamu alaikum, brother. Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Please mention your name, initials, first and last, city and state. Jazakallahu khairan. W from Oakland, California. Assalamu alaikum, Sheikh Mufti. What is the myth when Ibn Abbas said the Prophet ﷺ did two prayers together with nothing in between them? Barakallahu feek. Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I don't know exactly. I'll tell you. Hadith is clear. Hadith is crystal clear. Once again, like we just said, The Prophet ﷺ made Dhuhr and Asr. He made Maghrib and Isha. And in many different narrations, he wasn't traveling. He wasn't in a state of fear. It wasn't raining. The versions of the Hadith. Ibn Abbas was asked, why did he do that? Ibn Abbas clearly said, Arada an la yuhrija ummatahu. Not to put his nation to a hardship. It's crystal clear. The Prophet ﷺ was not traveling. He combined between the two prayers to show and to teach the Muslims that there are times, not all the time of course, because the Quran, the Hadith clearly tell us to pray on time. The sun rises, the sun sets, etc. That's clear. But the Hadith is telling us that time may come which a Muslim is put in a hardship and won't have the time or the ability to make the prayer in its proper time, and he finds them together. Even though he isn't traveling, he wasn't fighting, even though it wasn't a hardship and going to the masjid because of the rain or the mud or a sandstorm. It's simple and plain. So therefore, I know I'm going to get stuck in traffic. I'm driving down here. It's horrible traffic. I don't have the ability to stop. I know I'm going to miss it. So on and so forth. I'm going to get stuck at the doctor's office. I have a surgery. I have this. I have an appointment. It's wintertime. The prayer. Let me make my Dhuhr and Asr right now. Because I know the Maghrib is going to come in. I'm not going to have the ability to make Asr on time. Now I'm going to do this every single day? Of course not. I'm going to do this just for the convenience because I'm too lazy. I want to lay in the bed and flick through the remote? Of course not. But if there's a time in which you're going to be put through a hardship, the proof is clear. Wallahu ta'ala. Next question says, Abu Akhira Shamsuddin. Allah knows best. And this was DB from Dublin, Ireland. Salam Sheikh. How to deal with a loss of wealth and financial hardship. Jazakallah khair. May Allah make it easy for you. May Allah give you His best. Ameen. And may Allah Azza wa Jal make you patient. Much can be said about this. Much can be said. Much. Try my best to summarize this much. For most, Allah tells us, وَلَنَبْلُوَنَّكُمْ. Indeed, we will test you. You have a deficiency of wealth, of selves. You lose a daughter or son. Someone will die. People will lose their lives. You will lose property. It'll be a bad year for harvest. Disaster, what they call, whatever the case may be. It's going to be. Allah tells us this. So if you already know that Allah says it and Allah is the most truthful, you are to prepare yourself. It's not a matter of if, but it's a matter of what? When. That's first and foremost. And that is from reading the Quran. Number two, perhaps that wealth that was taken from you wasn't no good for you. Perhaps you were behaving arrogantly or in a state of vanity, etc. Maybe God. And we learn this from many verses in the Quran. Allah talks about the people of the garden. Allah talks about the two men who were friends. What did he say to his friend? Because his garden was lusher, it was bigger, it was greener, it was better. And the wealth, it was taken away from him. So sometimes it's a grounding tool to ground you. I was starting to get stuck up when I was driving that car. I was, smelling myself just a little bit too much. And Allah took it away from me as a favor for me. Thirdly, from that which can be said with regards to the loss of wealth and financial difficulties, so on and so forth, is that it was Allah's, and Allah lent it to you. I let you hold my book. Tafadhal. Lend you my book. I call you to you and say, Assalamu alaikum. Hey, Sheikh, I need my book back. Oh, I'm not yet. Oh, what do you mean? You stingy? Jazakallah khairan. I need my book back. It's my book. I was generous enough to lend it to you, and now I demand my book back. I need no long explanation. It's my book, and I want it back. Allah Azza wa Jalla owns all that is in the heavens and the earth. And when He decides to take it back, how upset and, distraught can you possibly be? It was never yours. And obviously that's easier said than done. We're humans. We think that we own, we feel that we own, but in reality we don't own anything because we're slaves. A slave has no wealth. I allowed you as your master to go and work and make some money on the side for yourself. I offered to buy your manumission from me. But if I choose to say, no, you're mine, I own you, then what? That is. So we need to be reminded that we are slaves. We are not in control. We are not masters of anything. We don't own anything. Allah is the true king, subhanahu wa ta'ala. So every day we need to be reminded. Last but not least, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala, the Quran tells us, you may dislike a thing, you may hate a thing, but it may be best for you. Allah may put a lot of good in something that you look down upon. So you lose money now, you went through this, accident insurance, whatever the case may be. Allah could bless you with something bigger, better, and purer. And most successful people, Muslim and non-Muslim alike, would have experienced great loss, hardship, and mishap. All winners and champions failed and lost. Look now. So, blessing in disguise, as they say. That's what I was saying. Wallahu ta'ala. Questions come from the Bronx. Initials TA. How do you respond to someone who says that there's room for ijtihad in Aqidah based on doubts, issues? And so the difference is between Atharis and Ash'aris is based on Ash'ari's ijtihad in responding to issues during their times, so we should respect their ijtihad. Right. It depends on what you mean. What do you mean by there's ijtihad? There's independent deduction and finding a conclusion based off of your own efforts. What's meant by that? Secondly is, you must make a difference between actual difference, core difference, versus difference in wording and difference in style. There are different groups and denominations in Islam in which, yes, there's a core difference between me and you. Absolutely. And there are other times, denominations and groups in which, even between the groups, but this issue we really don't differ on. It's just you take a different approach of explaining it, categorizing it, and simplifying it. But at the end, we both agree on the same thing. So it depends on what you mean. So if you call a color gray, and he says slate gray, and he says smoke gray, and he says it's called lead gray. Or it may be a different shade of gray. He calls it gray, he says it's faded black. Or dingy white. So on and so forth. So there is a difference between the style. They may not agree with the wording, but they're saying the same thing that you're saying. Or there may be actual difference. Navy blue and gray, two different colors. So you have to establish what group is saying what. That's first and what? Foremost. So ijtihad and the core versus ijtihad and the wording and the classification. Two different what? Two different things. Everybody clear on that? That which is clearly mentioned in the Quran and the Sunnah. That which the companions and their disciples, no question, agreed upon. There's no ijtihad concern. There's no doubt about that. That which wasn't mentioned directly in the Quran and Sunnah. That's a different story. Or the companions themselves had different views on a thing or a matter. That's a what? Different story. So it all depends on what you're discussing and what you're speaking on. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. طيب خير إن شاء الله. على كل حال, Furqan, to simplify things, I believe that I stated is that there are levels of knowledge in all fields. Period. There are levels of knowledge in all fields. All fields. So anyone who is recklessly and irresponsibly reading something or taking something is wrong. But I hope it's not a fork in the road that isn't specific to hadith. There are people who take fiqh rulings, fatwas, fiqh books, and do just that. They recklessly pick and read it in a book, so on and so forth. I read in the Quran to cut off the hand of the thief. I'm at my house. I saw someone trying to break into my car. I grabbed him up, and I chopped off his hand. Does the Quran not say cut the hand of the thief? Yes or no? No doubt. Is that not a proof? Was the usage correct? Was the situation correct? Maybe, maybe not. But the moral of the story is the incorrect usage of the dalil isn't exclusive to what? It isn't exclusive to what? That's the moral of the story. Abuse of information is all across the board. That's the moral of the story. So if a Muslim, for argument's sake, if this is what you're asking, Muslim who's just picking up any hadith book without no proper knowledge, no proper understanding, of course we don't condone that. And of course we shun that. There's no doubt about that. We don't, that behavior isn't condoned. For someone who has no basics of usuq, for someone who has no basics of consensus and difference of opinion, to just open up volume 3 of Bukhari, yeah, everything. But the problem is, A, that isn't exclusive to hadith books. And if we take a stance, then we're going to have to take the stance of don't read the Quran. And people have said things like this. Don't read this book of hadith because it talks about this. And the Quran also talks about it. The Quran speaks about it. And this is what the non-Muslims have done. Read the Quran, recite it beautifully, don't interpret it. Don't mention it, but just Taraweeh. Could a non-Muslim say you can't recite the Quran in Taraweeh? Yes or no? And the strictest non-Muslims, don't they allow the Muslims to read it in Ramadan? The whole Quran. And in the Quran are all of those uncomfortable, controversial things of misogyny, of jihad, of this, of that, of that. There's a question about that. From Baqarah all the way to the end of the Quran. They can't stop the Muslims from reciting it. But the Imam now opens up this read tonight. O you who believe, fight hard in this cause against it. Whoa, that's a different story now. So that, to me, that's the crux. It isn't specific to hadith. There are people who abuse all sciences. And number 2, the closer you get to that being so dangerous and poisonous, is no different than the Quran. The Prophet ﷺ, when he said concerning the thief or the drunkard, how many hadiths about misogyny? You shouldn't read those hadiths, it's going to confuse the people. You're right. Nor should you read it in the Quran. The Quran talks about misogyny and receives double portion of inheritance. You cannot, do not marry the mushrikun to the Muslim women until they believe. A woman can't get married until male believers allow. Is that not misogyny? Yes or no? There's no question about it. So it can't be a double standard that people take and a derogatory approach that people take. The books of hadith will mislead you, nothing else will. That's what just doesn't add. I don't know if that's what you're asking about specifically. Fine, follow.
So what I mean is that, okay, we have as they the awam, the common people reading hadith, right? And because there are so many hadith, and the science of hadith is so vast, right? And the science of hadith is attached to usul fiqh, usul sirah, all of these things. And then the common person goes through the and gives fatwas on stuff, or says that something should be done this way based off of a hadith that they may have read, which they don't know the context of the hadith, when, where, how, sahih, not sahih, da'if, or whatever the hadith may be. And this is one of the reasons they say, and I'm just particularly talking about hadith, I'm not talking about Quran, I'm not talking about fiqh, specifically hadith. And this is why, like the book of Sahih Bukhari, it was not made for the common Muslim to go in and dive into rules, the commonness. This is what I'm talking about.
Yes and no. Some of what you're saying I agree with. Some of what you're saying I disagree with. What you mentioned about a person independently extracting rulings, we can agree on that. No doubt about that. Bukhari, Muwatta, any book hadith. Facts. But I don't accept the premise that every single hadith, every fiqh ruling is so confusing and mind-twisting and warping. I read the Prophet ﷺ told us to smile when you meet your brother. I don't need no stick interpretation of that. Fear the fire even with half a date. It's clear. Give sadaqah no matter how money you, how you know, whatever you have. Have $1 to donate. Doesn't need a scholar to break that hadith down in 10 volumes. Nor do I need the permission of a scholar. Don't act upon it, don't read it. So there are some issues without any question, many scholars have discussed in volumes. And they far, no doubt about that. Students of knowledge, let alone awam, can't just jump into those issues. That's a fact, 100%. But the problem is, for every problematic hadith, quote unquote, that you find that people shouldn't read, there is a simple, easily understood hadith that they should be reading. And that is a fact, and I challenge anyone who has that rationale to debunk that. Just take Sahih Bukhari, let's write down all the hadiths. I guarantee for every major thought, you're going to find the Prophet was kind. The Prophet raised his hands on the salah. And you're coming and you're telling me you can't raise your hands on the salah. There's no way. Impossible. What's the interpretation? I've read in all books the Prophet raised his hands on the salah. Typically, the Prophet raised. And now you're saying, well, my madhab, you shouldn't raise your hands on the salah. So that's how it works. So a part of that, I agree. And part of that, I strongly disagree with. It depends on what the situation is. It depends on what the issue is. And once again, for everybody to hear, Abu Jazz, I'm sure you get it. We do not condone the reckless, irresponsible jihad of a person who isn't qualified to make it. It's clear for the record. We don't condone that. Let alone me. I never studied properly. I never went here. I never had this. I don't even know Arabic. And I only my own rulings out of Bukhari, but now I'm being aggressive and pushing around others. A bad name. You wearing a green kufi, such and such. And I don't even know why you came kufi. So, irresponsible, reckless, looking into text, we don't condone. Then you're aggressive. Then you're fanatical. And you practice bigotry. That has caused great harm to Muslim Ummah. And we see it every single day. But the problem is, fanaticism and bigotry is applicable to all groups. Whoever is guilty of it is guilty of it, not just one denomination. Hanafis are guilty of fanatical blind following, and so are the Malikis. Whoever's, it fits the shoe. You don't even have to wear the shoe. Wallahu ta'ala. Hopefully that's more of what specifically what you were asking about. Hey, wallahu alam. This is why we always say, and all the classes, to study, to learn. To study and to learn, to benefit. And to be mindful of what we say and how we say it. And the greatest sin, according to Ibn al-Qayyim, as he said, is speaking about Allah without knowledge. That can take place with the Quran and with the Hadith. Not just the Hadith. That's the moral of the story. And Allah's best. Fadl akhi. Fadl.
Well, that question, he said that haram or frown upon to clean chilies with pork.
To clean pork?
From my understanding, the brother he has a job, and on the job he has to clean pork. Part of the job he has to clean pork. So he want to know what's a frown or
It's a haram to clean chilies. Imam Malik said there's no easy knowledge. Imam Dar al-Hijra, that's what he said. There's no knowledge. And the proof for that is, Allah says, indeed we will send down upon Muhammad a what? Qawlan thaqilan. Heavy statement. Imam Malik said all knowledge is heavy. There's no such thing as Malik said that. Not me, not this one, not that one. Malik. Alright? We agree on that? Imam Dawud Hijrah. Ala kulli hal today. A Muslim shouldn't have any involvement or contact with the flesh of swine, or anything that comes from the flesh of swine. Whether he's serving it, packing it, delivering it, etc. He shouldn't have any contact with that. But for argument's sake, if he's forced to do that, that's the only means that he has, that's different discussion. Wallahu ta'ala. Fadal.
Do you recommend summarized and abridged versions of more complicated books for the layman to read?
Would I recommend summarized or condensed versions? Of course. No, summarized version. But there are a few things that have to be discussed. One, if the hadith is problematic in the full version, and it's also going to be what? Problematic in the summarized version. Two, maybe they'll take out what they consider to be unsuitable or problematic. And you're going to benefit from the summarized version, but you can't get the full juice. You don't get the full benefit of the orange just by drinking orange juice. Rather, they may say drinking orange juice is harmful. So there are different nutrients and vitamins, there are different things. There's different experience of peeling the orange yourself, picking the orange yourself, throwing the orange yourself. And that's knowledge. So I benefit from the condensed version of Bukhari, which is maybe better for me than not if I'm Muslim, but it's not the same as me picking up volume 3 and reading the whole chapter as Imam Bukhari wrote it. And it's something that we have to understand. It's very important. Why do people feel so entitled? Why is it a requirement for you to benefit from a book that you have to understand every single thing in the book? Who said that? Why are you so entitled? If you read a book and you got 70% of the information, 7 out of 10 shots, good or bad? You don't do that. You don't have to get every single thing. You don't have to understand. And once again, not to go to the last issue or the other issues, but it is important. People have a hypocritical prejudice when it comes to these things. Everything about the hadith you have to understand. But we read the Quran day and night, and if we sat down and had a basic exam on Uloomul Quran, most would fail. Basic. So, do you know everything about Surah Baqarah? Do you know everything about An-Nisa? Of course, most of it. But you read it, you study it, you translate it, no problem. But hadith, oh. What type of double standard is that? That makes no sense. And obviously that can be used, a tool of shaitan, to get people to disbelieve and reject the hadiths. And that's one of their strongest proofs. They said hadiths don't make sense. Or the hadith keep the Muslims behind. Or the hadiths promote superstition. You wake up, the shaitan urinates in your ear, so that's superstition. That's made up. That's fabricated. No problem. Prophet Sulaiman, how did they know that he died? According to the Quran. What happened? What does Allah say? It's in the Quran, guys. What does Allah say about the jinn? What does Allah say about the army of demons, builders and divers? How superstitious is that? So if the hadiths have superstition in them, which mislead people and made up, aim, can, and will, and has been said about what? That is why hadith rejection is the doorway to what? Quran rejection. Careful. Wallahu ta'ala a'lam. Inshallah, we'll stop here tonight. Jazakumullahu khairan. May Allah Azza wa Jalla bless each and every one of us, each and every one of you. Thank you for your time, for your respect. Inshallah ta'ala, tomorrow morning, Kitab Sunnah, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala, after Salat Fajr, by the permission of Allah the Most High. Allah surely knows best. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen.